Hello, Internet, and welcome to my review for Fairy Tail episode 304. When we last left off, Gajeel died, or did he? We will talk about that at length later on. And Irene completely changed the world with Universe 1. That leaves us straight into this week's video. I do not have a straw poll because that is closed. I will put an update on that probably Tuesday or Wednesday. I have a big paper due Wednesday, and I'm focusing on that first. But beyond that, let's jump straight into the review. So, my first thought, the episode opens with a 2-second recap of, oh right, Universe 1 just happened, and then a minute of Zera's death from Fairy Tail Zero. And I was initially going to be critical of putting the Zero flashback that early, as I felt it gave too much away about Zera's return way too early. But it's framed as the first thing Mavis thinks of when her physical body wakes up, which makes sense. It's a very traumatic incident for her. Given everything we learned about her earlier in the arc, maybe it's not the most traumatic, but it's certainly a defining one. And so it doesn't instantly say, oh hey, Zera's back. But it does kind of prime the audience to think about Zera, so that when she returns, it's like, oh yeah, hey, it's Zera. I remember you. Moving on to the new OP. So the new OP is great. The video is so much better than the last one for anime-onlys. You know, the last one spoiled so much. Now that we've gone through it, I can say it all. It spoiled, the Gajeel thing. It spoiled, Ultir coming back. It spoiled... I'm trying to think of all the things it spoiled. It's been a while. But, it spoiled a lot. If you look through it, oh, hey. And not in that kind of, now that I've seen it, I now understand. But, oh, Ultir is just there in the fight with Wendy and Shelia, with Demaria. Why is Ultir back? That's a huge spoiler. The Gajeel stuff isn't quite as clear. But still, it's kind of a spoiler. Here, there are still plenty, it still alludes to a lot of the events to come, especially the second half of the video, but most of them are pretty impossible to guess without having read the manga. There are some that you can figure out, I think, fairly easily. Onto the song, though, I like the song. At the moment, I don't think it's quite as fun as Down by Law, but we'll see what I think at the end of the core. That'll be a thing we'll see how much I like it later on. On to things I don't like. The new title card is so much. We don't need, 10 seconds for a title card. No, get the title out, move on. Simple as that. We don't need clashing and things breaking. That's too much. Anyway, on to the actual plot of the episode. So, Mavis's confusion as she wanders the deserted guild hall is really well done. At this point, the audience still doesn't really know what Universe 1 did. We're not quite aware what's happened with Universe 1. So Mavis is in much the same position as the audience, as she wonders where the fuck did everyone go. And then there's that moment of horror, when she, turns and she sees Zeref, and you're like, oh, we're fucked now. So yeah. Zeref reveals that everyone getting scattered by Universe 1 was just an after effect of Irene moving everyone away so that she can put Zeref alone with Mavis. And now that's happening, and he's in the guild hall and no one else is. Yeah. We get some scenes showing where everyone is in the aftermath of Universe 1. Where they are isn't really important because they're all nondescript locations. Brandis and Healed August is one thing. Natsu and Lucy are near Mercurius and Cardia Cathedral, and are right next to each other. And I'll talk about them over there in a second. But they find Grey, Urza, and Juvia as well. But most of the guild is wound up on this beach. And we need to talk about, it's been brought up by some reviewers in the Mavis flashback episodes, those damn silhouettes in the guild scene. Those are bad. I kind of looked over them during Mavis's backstory, because they were mostly, people in the background compared to the focus of the shot. But none, either the background characters were fully designed, or all the background characters with silhouettes there. Here is just so bad. Sometimes the whole guild is the focus of a shot, and they're in silhouette for some fucking reason. There's a bit where, I forget who the focus of the shot is, but in the background you have Macau and Wakaba, and a silhouette. Why? I mean, I know there's been a lot of talk about how kind of not there the animation is in this season, but this is just ridiculous. like, animate the fucking background characters! Or at least draw the background characters. Holy shit! Draw your background characters! Anyway, now on to the big thing that we need to talk about. And that is Gajeel's survival. It's something I'm not a fan of, really, at all. And it's not that I think necessarily that Gajeel should have died. Like, in general. Just as a blanket statement, Gajeel should die in the Alvarez arc. It's not something I think at all. But Mashima does this thing a lot, from here to the end of the arc, where he always wants the audience to think that someone is dead or right about to die, normally actually dead, but then just refuses to kill them off. And I'm not going to spoil it, I'm not going to spoil anything, but like, this becomes a recurring theme throughout the rest of the arc, and it's dumb. You know? It's just like, if Mashima did not constantly say someone was about to die, the lack of death in Fairy Tail would not bother me. But because he's always like, oh yes, this character will be dying here, and then they just, like, don't die, you know? And, like, it's just so convenient, too. Like, even Zara points out that it's just so convenient. You know, oh, while you were being sucked into the underworld, Universe 1 just happened to go off. Okay, wow, that's completely luck-based. There's a huge misdirect there, too, as it's shown in the anime to be, like, well afterwards. I'll talk about that Acnologia line, where it seemed like Acnologia, as there are 6 dragons left, is as Gajeel dies. I'll talk about that in just a hot sec. I have a big thing to say about that. But, like, this is kind of the moment in the manga fandom where everyone kind of turned on Alvarez. You know, Alvarez had originally been seen as, like, a pretty good arc that unfortunately just, like, was not as good as Tartaros, because Tartaros was, like, phenomenal. After this moment, everyone hated Alvarez. You know, people think it's just a fucking dumpster fire. And I don't think that's true. I think there's a lot to like in Alvarez, even going forward from here. There's still plenty of good moments, as we'll see. But it is true the back half has more than its fair share of problems. We'll see how the anime handles that. There are some things that definitely I think the anime could touch up on going forward. A big one with Irene's story we'll see going forward. Maybe the anime could find some way to mitigate that. But anyway, as I was talking about Acnologia, so if Gajeel is alive, and Gajeel never died, how do we deal with Acnologia's declaration that there are 6 dragons left that we saw last week? So that's something I've been thinking about for a long time. Even back when this stuff first happened in the manga, I was like, what the fuck is up with that line? But as a result of some later developments in both Alvarez and 100 Years Quest, that I'm not going to spoil, don't worry, I think I've come to an answer. So without going into any spoilers, Acnologia is ridiculously bad at sensing dragons. For all of his massive strength, the only way he'll know if someone is a dragon is if they have fucking scales and wings and 4 legs. That's it. Without that, he has no fucking clue if there's a dragon right in front of him or not. You know, the dragon could be literally right in front of him. He would have no fucking clue if he had not already seen them as a dragon or using Dragon Slayer magic or something. Without that, he has no idea what the difference is between a dragon and a person. Okay? That's my theory. Manga fans, you know the evidence for that. Which means that when Acnologia says that line, he's not actually noticing Gajeel die. So, if you'll recall, when Acnologia kills God Serena, he says there are 7 dragons left, which is true. There are 7 Dragon Slayers left after God Serena dies. And the fact that those statements are the same thing, just with a different number, 6 dragons left, 7 dragons left, means that he's practicing the cool line he's gonna say the next time he kills a Dragon Slayer. Which is hilarious. You know? He's wandering the fields, practicing cool things to say when he kills people. That's funny, okay? You know, it kills the mood, I admit, but it's fucking funny. It's almost enough to make up for the Gajeel bait and switch. It's not. It's still a bad writing choice, but it's funny enough that I'm almost happy we went through this. Another thing that makes me almost happy we went through this, is Gajeel, when he realizes he's alive, and he thinks back to his, like, grand statement, I want to be with you together always, Levy. And he's just so embarrassed, and like, oh my god, Gajeel. Gajeel and Levy's reactions to realizing Gajeel's alive almost make up for the fact that Gajeel did not die there. So yeah, moving on to Zira. How is Zira back? So Zira explains it kind of weirdly and kind of obtusely, but I think it basically goes like this. In Mavis's base form, if Mavis is like spawned from the ether, she's creating Zira. And the initial Zira thought projection was destroyed because Mavis knew that she was actively creating her. However, when she was revived, Mavis goes back to her base state of creating Zira. That's her natural state, as long as she does not know that she's creating Zira, and does not remember that she has created Zira in the past. She's still kind of shaken up by Zareth, so Zira's not really on her mind at the moment. But as soon as Zira does say, as soon as she remembers me, I'll go away. So that's what's going on with Zira. Anyway, with that, we get a new eye catch design. Which is really cool, I will admit. I wasn't a big fan of the first half of Season 3's eye catches, but this one, Mavis and Zareth, the design is really cool, the music's really cool. It's a minor thing, it's a nice thing. Anyway, so we then get more of just how powerful Irene is, as she ends up in Mercurius, or we kind of do, because we don't actually see her fight the royal guards, and that's an important thing because her magic is kind of a big spoiler, as we'll get into as Irene takes center stage more and more. Admittedly, though, the royal guards were never much to begin with, so it's not really saying too much that she wiped them out. She wiped them out in a second, I guess, is the big thing. The important thing, is that we see her creepy giant eye, which was one of my screen caps for this manga chapter, by the way back when. I saw like 3 of my old screen caps in this episode. It was kind of wild. 2 which were in last week's Next Time preview. That was incredibly wild. Anyway, I'm rambling again. Back to my notes. So Irene has noticed Urza. She's taken an interest in Urza. We will see how that develops going forward into the rest of the arc. And now, Irene's little henchwomen have joined the fray against the beach team. So yeah, Juliet and Heine are there. They're also super weird, by the way. They're fucking swords. Huh? That's such a weird thing. They're just swords with human personas, because that's what enchantment magic can do. Yeah. So, that's the thing Irene can do. She can make swords into people. Alright, as I mentioned, now we're moving into the Zira telling everyone to go back to the guild hall. And the moment where Levi hears Gajeel's voice and realizes he's alive, oh, my heart, y'all. My heart went out in that scene. That was so good. Actually, that whole scene is pretty great. It's a nice little morale-raising aspect. Also, just a reminder of, like, way back when everyone was, like, really, like, distrusting of Gajeel. Here, Gajeel is, like, their symbol of faith, you know? Oh, Gajeel's there with this voice. Clearly, she's on our side. It's a sweet little scene. It's nothing big, but, it's nice. And, at long last, after at least 100 episodes of this plotline being mentioned, Yukino's finally met her sister again. Yukino and Angel run into each other in, Universe 1, and Yukino, by the way, is with Elfman and the Saber Exceeds, Lecter and Frosch. They're just kind of chilling. Or they're headed towards the guild. I think they find people. Trying to remember who they fight next. But we'll get to that when we get to that. Anyway, the last thing we have to talk about in this episode is Mira versus Juliet and Heine. And we find out that Mira fucking took the soul of the fucking Tartaros base. She has Allegria in her arsenal. Like, holy shit, I forgot about that. She easily takes out Juliet and Heine with Allegria, but it completely drains her magic power to do it, and so now she's at the mercy of the newly arriving Irene. Episode end. See y'all next week. Before we go, though, the new ending is a pretty good song. It's nice and relaxing, which, given everything that's coming, something we will all definitely need to relax, whether it's just out of excitement or an anger of what's coming. This relaxing song is something we will need. The visuals are very heavy, by the way, on the countering of Natsu and Gray, which there's a little of in the OP too, but not to this extent. So keep an eye out for that. We'll have plenty to say about their relationship going forward. But yeah, that takes us to episode's end. So this is a weird episode. I think I can say that pretty uncontroversially. The first thing on everyone's mind is, of course, Gajeel. Gajeel is a lot. And I agree, Gajeel should have either stayed dead or Mashima should have never played with our emotions like that in the first place. Admittedly, the scene where he goes is so good that, like, it's almost worth it for Gajeel surviving, and Gajeel does some great stuff in the future. Also, Gajeel and Levy's reactions to realizing that Gajeel is alive are both great. So it's... The stuff around the bullshit of Gajeel living is good enough that I'm not as angry as I might have been, 3 years ago when this first happened. No, yeah, let's say it was like almost 4 years, but it's not almost 4, it's almost 3. Anyway. Beyond that, this is also just a pretty scattershot episode, which is understandable, given that it's establishing where everyone is now that Fiore is so drastically changed. It has to spend a lot of time with all the different characters. But hopefully next week we'll be more focused. Now that we've established where everyone is, we can focus on one scene at a time. We do get to see Mira go all out for the first time since Tartaros. I think since she fought Stela. Even if that is fairly short, it's like the last 3 or 4 minutes of the episode, it's still definitely the episode's highlight. But who knows how she'll get out of this one next week. I don't remember what happens with her next week. So yeah, that ends this episode. Next time, Mira faces the strongest enemy she's ever seen in Irene, as some surprising faces make their return. So I'm going to leave this video off here. Hope you all enjoyed the episode and the video. If you did, feel free to drop me a like, or subscribe, or, do whatever makes you happy. And remember, y'all, your life is your own, okay? Bye!